The novel Madame Bovary by Gustave Flaubert is one of the masterpieces of French realist literature, first published in 1857. It tells the story of a woman named Emma Bovary who, in her longing for romance and a passionate life, becomes trapped in the monotony and limitations of her marriage, leading her toward a tragic fate. Madame Bovary. A cool breeze drifted across the damp green fields, carrying the scent of fresh grass and gently swaying the hedgerows along the road. Now and then, birds would rise from the bushes, flutter briefly, and settle again in a quiet corner. In the midst of this rural calm, a man rode on horseback Charles Bovary, the village doctor. A kind-hearted and simple man, wearing a brimmed hat and carrying his leather bag. He looked from afar like a figure from an old pastoral painting. He was on his way to the large, wealthy farm of a landowner to examine his ailing wife. The large wooden house stood in a wide yard filled with fruit trees and the scent of fresh bread and burnt firewood. Warm steam curled from the chimney. And there, behind a white curtain swaying in the breeze, Charles saw a face that would remain etched in his mind, Emma. Her skin was soft and fair, her deep eyes fixed on some faraway place. Her movements were calm and measured, like someone living in a world of her own. Emma had been raised in a convent where, at night, when silence settled everywhere, she would light a candle and read romantic novels. The heroes in those stories were always brave, passionate men who rescued women from lifeless existence. Months passed, and fate brought Charles and Emma face to face again. This time, with a pounding heart and a slightly trembling voice, Charles asked for her hand in marriage. Emma, perhaps hoping that this marriage would be a doorway to a grand and exciting life, accepted. The beginning of married life. The first months were filled with freshness for Emma, short walks along dirt roads lined with wildflowers, long nights listening to Charles speak softly while the wind brushed the windows, and a quiet hope that the future would be brighter. But gradually, everything became monotonous. In the mornings, Charles went to see patients. In the afternoons, silence filled the house, and at night, the dim light of the oil lamp flickered in the corner of the room. Sometimes Emma stared at the wall, asking herself, was this all marriage had to offer me? The party that changed everything. One day, an invitation arrived. Charles and Emma were invited to a grand ball at a nobleman's estate. That night, when Emma stepped into the ballroom, it was as if she had entered the pages of her beloved novels, crystal chandeliers scattering light across glasses of wine, a piano playing a slow, enticing melody, men in gleaming coats, women in silk gowns perfumed with sweet, expensive scents. Everything here spoke of elegance and pleasure. Emma spent the night with shining eyes, gazing around. Her heart whispered, "This is where I belong." When the ball was over and she returned to the dark, quiet village home, the silence felt heavier than ever. The arrival of Rodolphe. Some time later, at a local event, Emma met Rodolphe, a handsome man with dark hair, a warm voice, and words that flowed like music. Looking into her eyes, he said, "You weren't made for this place. You should live in a city where every night is like a celebration." These words burned like an ember in Emma's heart. Soon, secret meetings began, walking in gardens under the moonlight, exchanging letters scented with perfume, sharing silent glances that spoke volumes. Eventually, they planned to run away together. Emma prepared her dresses, gathered her jewelry, and waited with a heart full of hope. But on the morning of their escape, Rodolphe was nowhere to be found. Instead, a letter lay on the table. "Emma, this is not for the best. Farewell." Her world collapsed in an instant. For weeks she lay in bed, listless, silent, broken. Love returns, this time with Leon. Time passed. One day, at the town market, Emma crossed paths with Leon again, a young man with fair hair, bright eyes, and a smile that seemed to step straight out of her novels. Their relationship blossomed slowly, but this time Emma had no doubts. She began traveling to Paris under the pretext of legal errands, only to meet him. In cobblestone streets, in warm cafes smelling of fresh coffee, and in hidden hotels with thick velvet curtains, they created moments that tasted like freedom for Emma. But every trip, every gift, and every new dress had a price. Debts began to pile up. A man named Leroux, who had lent her money, now demanded it back mercilessly. The fall. One by one, the creditors came knocking. Desperate, Emma wrote to Rodolphe, swallowing her pride to ask for help. No reply. She turned to Leon, but he too withdrew, making excuses. There was nowhere left to run. That day, with trembling steps, she walked to the pharmacy. She glanced around, forced a smile, and under a casual pretense, obtained a packet of arsenic. When she reached home, her hands were cold and damp with sweat. She swallowed the white powder in haste. Minutes later, pain like fire ignited in her stomach and spread through her whole body. For long hours she writhed in agony. Charles, unaware of her loves and betrayals, sat beside her, holding her hand, whispering through trembling lips, "Emma, don't go." When it was over, Charles found letters and notes that revealed the truth. He lived for days in grief until, in silence and loneliness, he too died. Their little daughter, left alone and unprotected, was eventually consigned to utter poverty. Themes and central ideas. The gap between dreams and reality. Emma despises her real life and continually escapes into romantic fantasy. Critique of society. Flaubert subtly condemns moral hypocrisy, the limitations placed on women, and the materialism of his time. Realism. The story portrays, with unflinching detail, the life of the middle class and the slow decline of a woman. Message of the story. Madame Bovary is the tale of a woman who, in chasing her grand dream, lost everything. Flaubert paints, with merciless clarity, the chasm between illusion and reality, the constraints on women, and the cruelty of society.